Please welcome Zun Ahmed Han, who is a research fellow at the Belt and Road Strategy Institute of Xinhua University and a very proud curator of Scholar Network. Please welcome Zun, and you can introduce the panelists. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Vika. It's been a wonderful event so far. I'm so glad we could make it work. And now we're looking forward to our first panel, which is going to be about young entrepreneurs, their successes, lessons, and opportunities for the way forward. So before we start, I just want to quickly say that definitely the SEO region is very young and dynamic, and together we have the ability to make wonders happen. Today we have so many people joining this event, and a lot of you want to know how is it that we can cooperate, how is it that we can actually manifest the Shanghai spirit. And as part of Scholar, as part of the SEO family, I think this is exactly what we want to work towards. To that end, we have with us three very wonderful, young, successful entrepreneurs. Firstly, Biman Ajika, who is CEO of SCO Technologies. And Biman had also been on one of our discussion clubs before. We have learned a lot from you. And before we also had you on various events to understand what are the opportunities for youth. So thank you so much for joining. And then we also have with us Alina Abdrakhmanova, who is a founder and CEO of Geneva Business School in Kazakhstan. Thank you, Alina, for joining. And we have with us Artem Zhdanov, founder of LaowaiMe. So three of you are here to discuss what lies ahead for young people who are watching right now, and for especially people who are trying to understand how can youth really find ways to work together despite the barriers that exist. And I think specifically today we also would like to focus on what are the new challenges that confront young entrepreneurs in the time of COVID. All of us have experienced it. Some of us realize that this is an excellent opportunity to unite. So I would also want to know your personal experiences with respect to that. So let's start with you, Biman, that, you have been in China since 2008. You are a researcher and a serial entrepreneur, and you have delivered over 800 advanced technology projects to companies like Tencent, Microsoft, and Porsche. Let's first understand, how did all of this start? Where did it begin?
I think the thing started very early on. So I come from an SEO country, like a little paradise island called Sri Lanka. And when I was in Sri Lanka, one of the things that keep on driving me was around curiosity and then solving big problems. So when you look at where we come from, we don't have skyscrapers, we don't have this crazy advanced infrastructure. So that it kind of pushes you to the point that you also want to learn how to build a rocket, you also want to go to moon. So when you want to just do that transition, so you kind of figure out what are the opportunities that there for you to get out of countries, learn, acquire the skill set, and work together in a much more productive way. So I wanted to go to the country that everything is made from. So I decided China was the country that I want to go and learn the knowledge to be able to build products and learn the language to be part of the culture. And so that's how the transition happened. So I was very fascinated by moonshot problems, a framework that came out from Google saying that you need to have huge problems that youth should be because we have time, we can take risks. And that's one of the things that that drive me to just work on healthcare and work on problems related to it using breakthrough technologies, using radical solutions. And China is one of the best places to be able to be inspired by what is the best way not only to build technology, but make sure that that technology can be reached and accessible by more people, so that you build affordable high technology, so that every single person have access for facial recognition, every single person have access for IoT. AI is integrated in daily life. So how to build this in a much more practical way, not only build it for few, but for many, and solving these 1% challenges. I think that would summarize what's the opportunities that lie ahead when you go and start working on bigger problems.
Thank you, Biman. I think definitely we'll come back to that. Like, what is it that young people, especially now, who aspire? Because at the end of the day, you can't be too risk averse if you want to start your own businesses, if you want to innovate, etc. So I think this is also something that I would love to touch upon with you. Then next, Alina, thank you so much for joining the panel. Alina, in 2010, you became the first female champion of the television intellectual game leader of the 21st century in the history of that program. And in 2014, you opened a representative office of GBS in Nur Sultan. So can we understand what motivated you to achieve this, and also what keeps you going?
Well, since I was a child, I like to be the first one in everything that I do, and probably that's what motivated me to participate in the game and then to win it, and then to get a scholarship to study in Switzerland, because I come from a family with that doesn't have a background of sending children study abroad. And in Kazakhstan it's pretty traditional culture, and usually you don't send your daughter children abroad or far away. But it was sort of experiment for me and for my parents, and they got this chance. I won a scholarship. I went to Switzerland, and there I worked 2 years at university as an admission officer, as a marketing officer, and they proposed me to continue this job in Kazakhstan, but like an agent, send students there. But back in 2014, the economy was really in recession, and for many people, going to Switzerland wasn't very reasonable. So we thought, why not to bring Switzerland to Kazakhstan? So we set up a campus, and it was really an adventure. I was just 21 years old, but the problem was that I was so young that I couldn't think that it wouldn't happen. So for me, it was something normal to do and something very easy to do. That's what I thought. I just didn't have any other options in mind. So I just kept doing what I do, and apparently it worked out. And it's been 6 years since we're in Kazakhstan. We had more than 250 students from all the national oil and gas corporations, international companies studying with our MBA program. We now have offices in Astana and Almaty, and we're expanding. We're thinking about collaboration in other regions nearby, opening in other cities. So it's been an adventure, and I think what kept me doing what I do is because I love what I do. There is a passion for that, and for me it's not just about business, it's about an adventure that you have being an entrepreneur.
Yeah. And I think this is an interesting point to bring up, that you were so young, you just knew this is what you want to do, and you were not pessimistic as yet. But a lot of young people, they overthink, and sometimes they really do face a lot of hardships which dissuade them. So we would love to get back to you with what were those specific hardships? How did this, you started optimistically, but surely there must have been points where you thought you were going to give up, but you did not. And this is something that could be very valuable for our audience. So we'll come back to you, but first let's also introduce our third panelist. Artem, you have over 10 years of experience working in China. You are the founder of LaowaiMe brand. You have been featured by Chinese and international outlets, and also you are the founder and editor-in-chief of the most popular Russian media outlet. So beyond that, you are also involved in supply chain management and other services in China, and involved in academia. How does all of this connect, and what has been, in your opinion, the impact of these multiple projects you're involved in?
Okay, thank you. What is the biggest problem of doing business in China? Like any one of participants, can you I want to ask people.
We can take a response. People can message in the group.
I give a quick answer. Okay. It's a lot of opportunities. It's so many opportunities that you cannot focus on one. And what is the main feature of successful entrepreneur? Is focusing, right? And my example, actually, not a great example, because let's say I'm young and I'm still in the start of this entrepreneurship career. So for me, I do it on purpose to try different fields and to understand what is suitable for me. That's why it's so different. But anyway, it's all connected because it's driven by content. Because content marketing now is king in the world. So whatever you do, you need to produce content. And shortly, how did I start? First job in China was a factory. I was assistant to general manager on a leather factory. So it was like every day I spent on the manufacturing line and helping to manage all these things inside the factory. But at the same time, I keep writing articles about China and open my own page in VK and share my experience with people. And then I realized that many people liked it. And then many people start to ask me, like, could you help me to find a manufacturer in China and all the things? And then when I got enough leads, I risked to just like quit a job and do what I want and what I can. So I become like a private consultant, freelancer, but still didn't call myself as entrepreneur. But then also the answer on how to manage all the things. It's the right teams and right partner. I'm not alone in this thing, right? So my role in this all projects is more like a vision, strategy, and content creation, bringing leads. But then my teams manage and other things. So it's about splitting responsibilities in the right way and choosing the right partners.
Do you think that's sometimes a problem when you know how to do your work, you can predict the quality of your own work, and then when you have to involve a team and you have to recruit people, how is it difficult to delegate work or actually to be able to, not be so much of a perfectionist and trust other people with your idea? Has that been a challenge for you?
It's super hard actually, and one of our projects actually almost collapsed because it was not the right partnership from the start. That's why now I have this experience, and like if you choose partners, for sure you need to have a right, like a process of partnership. It's not like you're my friend, let's be a partner, I understand you. It's like a lot of different tests and different exams, let's say, after you follow all these steps. After that, only you can say this is a stable partnership. So it's about like, like lean startup technology, like a lean startup approach. So you just like trying to figure out all things, how they come to you, all the problems and questions.
I think that's also like there's a famous Chinese saying that you should feel the pebbles as you cross the river. And actually, as an entrepreneur,
exactly. That's the right approach in modern world, and especially when you're a young entrepreneur. I think like most of our problems, there are so many opportunities. We have so much energy, and we want to do this and that, and then like you need to cut all these unnecessary things. Even it's super interesting, and understand what you are more dedicated.
And then focus, but then also be like, for you're doing multiple things that somehow connect, but perhaps any person would not realize how all of these come together. So we will come to that. But speaking of pebbles and speaking of possible hurdles, setbacks, Piman, let's come to you. We all are facing a situation globally in the region, every country. We never imagined these would be the challenges we would be facing. Taking a flight from X place to Y is almost impossible to conceive right now. And of course, businesses, entrepreneurs, people who have been dynamic and optimistic face a new set of challenges. Can you talk a little bit about your personal experience, your company's experience through COVID? And I also believe you're specifically involved in some problem solving. You're trying to understand solutions during this period. How has all of that worked out for you?
So I think one of the things that I would like to say is like when this pandemic started, before that started, like I was working on air pollution, respiration, and technologies quite a lot in 2017 when pollution was a big problem. And then when COVID actually came out, like we were able to upgrade those products and give it to the users, like around 50,000 units. We did were able to make more than $1.5 million worth of equipment, and we were able to quickly give it to the people. And one of the things that came out of that, I quickly realized that that product that we were making at that time was something that is at the high luxury level of solutions. So we wanted to find whether we can kind of build low cost versions of these respiration equipments, especially masks, with advanced technology inbuilt to that, and to give it to consumers faster. So when COVID came to the picture, one of the things that came because I was stuck in Sri Lanka, and then at the same time that the borders are closed, you cannot have access to equipment, and then all these kind of supply chain drops. And when you're working on IoT or AIO hardware, you actually have factories facing down lockdowns, and then there's all these kind of problems going on. But one thing that we wanted to do was that we kind of wanted to really understand what is the problem that's going to happen, not for my business, for the people. And we quickly realized that masks going to be a huge problem after that's been half used or else fully used, right? So you don't know whether you're going to throw a mask out, whether it's going to be completely finished its life cycle, and that's going to create a new problem called waste. So that these are going to go to the oceans, they're going to pollute everything. So as an entrepreneur, you need to figure out first that if you're solving a problem, that how can you solve it 100%? Not just half of the problem. Let's have a pandemic, let's make a mask, and then again think about environmental impacts, so all those things later. So instead of
or
that,
not
we
think
wanted
about
to
them at all. Which
exactly, right? So then what we wanted to do was, so we actually created a mask out of upcycled material and recycled material, which is 100% biodegradable, and we integrate nanotechnology powered new sensors to measure the mask fit usage, all these extremely difficult parameters to measure, and making sure the person is 100% taken care of. And one of the things that came out of this was that we actually took graphite from Sri Lanka, and we actually did extraction of graphene and created one of the world's most smartest smart material based sensors for $1. So the reason that we were able to invent technologies out of pandemic is because there's no other way around. You need to come up with that. You cannot how to say, as an entrepreneur, do negotiations with your product, saying that come up with low cost, cheaper, not working version just to make money. But to have the intention, there's a huge problem. As smart individuals, you need to come and solve this problem 100%. At the same time, make sure that you can work with your network. Because one of the things that entrepreneurs do get is the ability to have larger networks. So you are working on creating what we call as this last mile solutions. Last mile solutions means you're not doing import export, you're doing technology transfer. So there are a lot of things that I've learned from China, and this was the best time to apply and transfer that knowledge back into your own country and come up with what are the best ways of solving the problems in front of you. And the other thing that I want to highlight in here is that you need to understand, as entrepreneurs or founders, you have a team that who actually look up to you. You have investors that you need to take care of also. But at the same time, if you're stressed out, there's no way that you can solve these problems. You need to be working with right intentions, and you need to make sure that your team is 100% supported through this crisis. And then it's about where those, I don't know if you guys have seen or not, World Economic Forum came up with the new skills that people should have in 2021. They're complex problem solving, the analytical thinking, these kind of things is more around how you can, as a leader, make sure that your team is being taken care of. You're taking the best way, that people are not going to take shortcuts. Because when you're working on health, it's extremely important that you are building really good products. At the same time, you're not compromising it for anything. No matter there's a pandemic or shortage of funds or cash, you need to always push through much more harder.
Wow. So I think definitely, and you also, you have to make sure in this kind of period that you're taking care of your employees. That's what a lot of people had to face. Maybe some people would say it's a luxury that you, for instance, you were telling me that you didn't lay off any of your employees, and their state of mind, their well-being was a priority. It was the only way to keep going. So I would love to come to that, but I would also like to remind our audience that you can ask your questions. There's a Q&A section, so please ask questions. Mention who your question is for, and as we move forward, we'll also include your questions in the discussion. So, Alina, let's come to you. Definitely, COVID has, just as Bima mentioned, a new set of challenges, complex problem solving. We realize that we really can't predict the future so much. It's good to have a plan, it's good to have a direction, but we need to be ready to improvise. We need to be receptive to what's happening around us. So I would like to ask how your experience, how your work was affected, and even a bit of how in this kind of a situation, I know personally for me, there were moments where I thought, wow, how will we move forward? What's next? People can become very optimistic. People can also become pessimistic and lose hope. So can you give us a little bit of an idea?
Sure. Well, definitely I experienced all of the stages. I was pessimistic. I was trying to be realistic. At some points of view, I was even optimistic because I thought, okay, crisis is the new opportunity. But we have to admit that the economic recession hit us as well. So from the economic perspective, of course, we had a few difficulties. But again, as Biman said, the employees, they were our first priority. So we didn't cut any of the salaries. We didn't fire any of our staff. So our team is still there, and we're trying to optimize other expenses, but still be on the go and expand. And what we did, since we're in the industry of education and education was affected, everything moved online, we developed a platform for VR learning, so learning in virtual reality. And this is how we decided to innovate our programs to make them more attractive first, and then also to help students get the same experience as they used to get before, being in physical class. But now, since everybody should do the distance learning, we decided to upgrade it to distance learning in 360. So that was our solution, and let's say anti-COVID action.
That must have been, because I think now, actually, even for example, I work in a research institute, and I think we also realize that in a crisis there is also an opportunity. So yes, now we're not able to go to different conferences, we're not able to have our discussion clubs face to face, which was something we always look forward to, but we can have these kind of webinars with so many people from all over the world, and we can have an effective panel discussion with people from different countries. So there is an opportunity if we look for it. And Artem, for you as well, you are involved in academia, in media, in so many projects. Has COVID-19, I mean, what kind of a toll or pressure did this period bring for you personally, for your work, and what did you learn from that?
It's like it's a big pressure. Yeah, we are still like recovering, and because like we have international business, when in China it's over, our customers like abroad, they have problems now. Many people actually even got bankrupt. So yeah, but again, talking about this opportunity thing, I told you that all what we started was from content. But recently, before COVID, there was like so many routine work that we forgot about this content power, and we got more into these processes, business themes, strategy, whatever. But then when we lost many customers, we got much more free time. So what to do? Create content again. It's about like whatever, like COVID will be over someday. I hope like 1 or 2 years, even like, I know, any disaster will be over. But your followers, your audience will stay with you. So the thing what you can grow, and it's actually cheap. It's creating content, and that's how we survived. Actually, that's like we recently in a few months we launched an audio podcast with my British partner. With another British partner, we launched the YouTube project, cultural project on YouTube. We also increased quantity and quality of our content on our EKD, the biggest Russian media about China. So yeah, it's a good opportunity to just change your focus again. I'm talking too much about focusing because it's a big challenge for us, I think, at least for my company recently. We are trying to... Yeah.
And was it like new topics that you were covering then? How did COVID change the content itself? Was that something you had to explore? Like what kind of topics would people be more interested in? Specifically because of what they're experiencing, or that didn't really play out?
No, for sure we got much more traffic on China news and what's going on in China, because in the start it was like epicenter of epidemic, and now many people are asking like post-COVID experience. Many of our customers even okay to pay for consultancy to for me to explain how Chinese companies survived and what is like after COVID environment in China. So the whole world can learn how the world will be after COVID from China experience. It's the right place to be now, I think.
Yeah, and in a very literal sense, China is ahead of the curve. We see what the new normal looks like, and I think that's something all of us can learn from. Biman, let's come to you again. You know, in the SEO region, a lot of the whole focus is to encourage young people to be able to collaborate. To that, you know, if you're from India, Pakistan, any country in the SEO, you're not confined to your borders, but this is a platform that facilitates, enhances, and makes us think beyond. You have worked with multiple countries. Can you give an idea how young entrepreneurs in this region can be encouraged to collaborate with others who are in other member countries? And also, is there a way that Scholar or the SEO can further facilitate cross-cultural?
I think like Zune, I would like start from this point. Like basically, first like I my target was around like Sri Lanka. Then what happened was that I wanted to become like an investor when I was 35. But then when I'm 30, I just asked myself like, why wait till 35? So last year we started like building our first incubator in Kenya, in Nairobi, with with the help with UN Habitat and World Bank. And you would be surprised, during COVID this year we had 1,200 applicants applying for like our incubator, and we selected out of like very rigorous like processing. We actually like from 20 we selected 10 companies to be virtually accelerated for 1 month period of time. So when you really look at the exercise, what we were doing there is that like now when you cut your salaries in half, right, what you need to do is that you're going to try to find an opportunity to make more money. Instead of that, what we are looking at with our partners, we have like director of intel of innovation from like all these UN Habitat World Bank people coming together, that to come up with like better ways of utilizing your time to give back, because now is the time to like cooperate. And the previous panelist said, that China's like journey or like learnings need to be localized for these communities, because like everyone like is really good at like hearing the story of Uber, but a lot of people are not familiar with the story of Didi. Like people are like familiar with like the story of Amazon, but like the story of Alibaba is said in Chinese. So the thing is that the people who are in China, entrepreneurs and like everyone, the bridging this story in the language that they understand is the key thing. The technology, like the problems, like for example facial recognition, like used in like China, and when you want to apply it in like to a country where like someone is wearing a burqa, like then the technology needs to be customized to be able to do the same thing using eyes. So the thing is that the entrepreneurs in that local ecosystem need to understand like what is the best way to apply this technology, what is the best way to understand this like learning and use it to their particular region to grow. So I think like there's a huge responsibility for us, not only as entrepreneurs but as storytellers, so that to like learn from one side of like the world, and then be able to like translate that message without noise. Because what like right now the media has been creating is it creates noise so that the original message gets dropped down in middle. So I think like our job as ambassadors is to like learn, grow. And second thing, most important thing, is to just like take this message to the corners that actually needs hearing right now, the needs inspiration. People that the small medium enterprises that who are like at bankruptcy, how can we get them out of it? So like even they want to raise money from China back, they need to make sure that their presentations, their decks, like their training need to be done in a way that the Chinese investors understand this like business problem part properly. So I think there's a huge like responsibility for us to like creating dialogue between these countries and share learnings. I think one of those examples that I would say is that like especially like this China Africa dialogue is that we are actually trying to give like entrepreneurs in Kenya, Rwanda, Nigeria the ability to just more than like to understand like the China's way of innovation, how fast we are building, how fast we are like changing the world, and to teach them these skills that is required so that they can actually like start applying this concept into their way of working.
So I think this is where literally both of our other panelists, Alina and Artem, Alina, you're involved in academia directly, business schools. I mean, do you think that telling China's success stories in business schools, not just in your country, but in the SEO region at large, can make an impact? And also I'd like to know, how can we achieve that? How can we facilitate more education collaborations as well in business schools and have students get experience from each other's countries, and maybe that can be a way to increase mutual understanding?
Yes, I think already events and platforms like we have today is already helping to exchange ideas and to build a sort of networking. And if we could have events like that more often, that would be great. And then I think the pandemic showed us, if before for making a collaboration, we were supposed to go to each other countries, spend lots of money for physical connections and meetings. Now during the pandemic, it doesn't matter. You connect within your country, or you connect with your neighbors or with people on the other part of the world. And the good thing of the COVID was that the digital became the new normal, and now we see that it's easier to make collaborations than we thought it is. And of course, showing China example, especially in Kazakhstan, it is very important, because when the pandemic started, Chinese doctors were coming to Kazakhstan to show the best practices on how to prevent infection and how to act to treat and to stop COVID. And that already started, and it would be great to extend it to education. And from our point, we could help with the completion of business cases that could be sent to universities and business schools in Kazakhstan. And if I could be of any help, I would do this with pleasure.
Wonderful. And we have so many people in our event today. So if you can think of a platform where sharing such case studies can be valuable, can make an impact, then you know who to reach out to, our panelist, Alina. Yeah. And Artem, you are a storyteller. And your work has a lot to do with I'm sure during the pandemic, what you were telling about China was a perspective that a lot of people did not have access to. I personally was also involved in that, so I can understand the importance and how significant it can be. If you share that space, you really can understand a new point of view. So how do you think your work as a storyteller can be influential for young people, either entrepreneurs, media personnel, or academics, to be able to create a sense of mutual understanding in the region?
What we are trying to do, that change the approach and let's say mindset about China in people's in abroad, especially in the West.
Yeah.
Not in SCO countries, but in Europe and US, especially what we have now, media wars and all the things. And the best way is to show to young people how another young people live. Business thing is important, theory is really important, but lifestyle and cultural things, I think in this case is even more important. Because you cannot do business with another country if you don't know how the people live, what they watch, what is the bestseller, what is the most watched movie this year in China. I'm sure no one knows in Russia, in US, whatever. But if you want to understand people, you need to understand that the same young people, they also listen to the same music sometimes. They watch maybe different movies, but they also could be interested. They are also so our goal is to show human face of China, all our project, whatever. And even business, we start to do business when we got one customer. We are trying to, before COVID, online is good. But still, you better bring people here and show them the real China, and that's how you can change your mind, and it's really will influence in many ways, and it will even speed up your business and all negotiations when they really see that Chinese people is also the same people as you. So it's nothing magical and so many myths. So you need to demystify China and translate culture and lifestyle. This is our goal now, and that's what we do.
And I think definitely all SEO countries, we could use a platform where it's exactly about understanding each other in a better way, in a deeper sense. And that can be a facilitator for other kinds of collaborations, academic or for entrepreneurs. So Bima, let's come to you now. I'm interested in knowing how a person like you are immensely successful. And I'm sure that this journey wasn't smooth. People can see what you've achieved, but they definitely don't know what all you've been through. Maybe you made personal sacrifices in that process, or it wasn't all, you could have had points where you thought, maybe this won't work out. And I think for young entrepreneurs, I personally know many people who started and either gave up or who are going through a rough patch. So firstly, I want to know how do you define success after so many years of experience with so many different people and initiatives? And what was that point where you thought you're going to fail, if there was one? And how did you come back from it? I think this is very important for people to hear.
I think, like, the first thing is that, like, it just goes back, like, very early. Like, I came to China with 500 RMB. So you can imagine, like, a student that who only speaks Sri Lankan Sinhala come into China, and then again, you understand that it's going to be a whole new journey. And then when I came from Sri Lanka, I actually played, like, badminton at a national, like, so many events, like, and stuff. I did astronomy. I had like 800 plus certificates and all these kind of things. You kind of tell yourself that, oh, you've done so much. So that means, like, you're going to go there and it's going to, like, be all going to start. You don't have to start from nothing. But the moment that you realize that you start from scratch, and then again, and people are so much hardworking. So that when you really understand that competition, I think, like, one of the things that I would just like tell for the young entrepreneurs is that is the point that you're going to ask and start doubting yourself. That, like, the competition, you're going to ask yourself that, like, this is too much. Like, that little point, you need to understand that key thing. So I remember, like, when I first went into this competition, like in China, where there was like 20,000 students taking part. I remember the first day that, like, I went there, how scared I was. And then I built like pair of gloves for deaf and blind children to, like, act normally. And I ended up becoming the #1 student. I won the competition, being the first foreigner ever, and got a scholarship. So when I did that, I just realized that it's my perspective, it's my learnings, it's my culture, it's everything that just, like, helped me to see the world in a different lens. And that is that's going to give you the competitive advantage. Whenever you doubt yourself, tell yourself that, like, you are special. You don't know what it is, why you're special for, but that's what, like, China is helping you to just, like, uncover and discover. Like, that little X in yourself, that's just going to help you to all make all difference. So I think that, like, my advice for you is just, like, basically keep on finding and take every single challenge that's thrown onto you, take it in terms of a gift, a new lesson, so that you'll be finding, like, what's that hidden talent in you that's going to make the whole difference.
Amazing. And I think it's very important for people to understand. We say, oh, we think success and failure are like binaries, and they actually exist. But from my experience, I think for anyone that I have had a deep conversation with, you have many successes and many failures, and it's just part of the whole process. So this is something important for people to also realize. Alina, you too, I mean, I think for you, I also have another question, because, you are not only successful in your work, in your dynamic work, you've been innovative and really been a role model for many women, but you are also a mom. You're also you're able to manage two roles that many women feel daunted by. Can you talk a little bit about also what success means to you, what you're trying to follow, what's that dream, and how do you manage these roles? Has it been difficult?
I will try to answer this question as quickly as possible, because Victoria is showing us the time frames.
Okay.
Yes, I think the issue of every woman is that we don't not only have our regular jobs, but we have a second job, which is called home. And of course, in order to keep the two in balance and not to feel guilty that you don't spend enough time with your daughter, the time management is the key, and you have to sacrifice some of the things that you prefer to do, like sports or hobbies, and you kind of give up on that, and to have more time with your family. That's one. And the second one is for sure delegation and trust in your team, because you stop doing everything by yourself and you start delegating, and that's how you find time to keep the balance. And of course, what I try to keep in mind is that my daughter will grow looking at me as an example, and if I want her to be successful in life and to pursue her dreams, I should show her by my own personal example. So that's it.
Wonderful. That was a perfect answer. And Artem, you the same. Like, what is that? What are you following? What are you chasing? And how has it been so far? What's success and what's failure? Just very quickly. And then we have one question from the audience. So after you.
The success for me is see feedback from people, because, like, as my main goal I see now is really like multicultural, cross-cultural bridging. And when people totally change their mind, especially when they had an opportunity to come here to China, and after 3 days, their skepticism, their like sarcastic, tone of their speeches becoming like surprisingly good, and you see that you change the mind of person, and you show them that and you're like a bridge. So my goal and what I'm following to be a bridge between cultures and countries.
And do you think that with COVID, I feel like on some level people are on edge, especially on social media, and having these kind of platforms or avenues to really understand each other, it's become more important with time.
Yeah, for sure. I need to talk. The main thing, like how we can solve problems, we don't talk. That's the problem. We don't listen to people. We just give comments and feedback and we don't want to listen to people. It's about dialogue. We need to do more of this kind of events, and that's one of the key of successful mutual understanding.
Okay, so we also have one question from the audience, which is about Kunming and about generally opportunities, how to get investment in Kunming and in other, especially with respect to Southeast Asia. So any of you who would like to answer, like if you have any experience, how can investment be attracted to a certain region, or how can, how to start, like if you've observed any such projects where we're trying to, a country or region is trying to attract investment. Do you have experience with that? Or let's ask you, Biman, because you are able to raise a lot of funds for a lot of your projects. How does that work? This is the question, basically.
I think, basically the key thing is that, you need to first come to China. And then again, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a startup, the best way is that, work with local accelerators or local programs, and then again, get the ability for you to showcase your products or your services to investors and entrepreneurs, and get critical feedback. But I'll tell you, before you come to Kunming, you need to first find the competitors for your product, and then again, learn as much as you can in China. In terms of, that's the key thing, so that when you come to your product comparison, you need to include who are the companies in China that who's actually direct competitors for you, and then you would figure out what is your value proposition in China. So when that is much more clear, then you can actually make sure that you are in the kind of ecosystem, so the investment funds or the incubators or accelerators actually help you to just go through this thing, because that's what they are for. They help you to reduce your cultural barrier, language barrier, and then again help you to plug you into the startup ecosystem in China. And after that, learn from Chinese advisors, investors, mentors, and then you would understand what are your prospects in China. So that, in order for you to do that, you can now do it virtually. So before, you have to physically come here, but now, since everything is going into virtual kind of events and online series and etc. Because I was in one of the judge boards for one of the Dongshan Keji Yuan in Beijing that was doing a roadshow for Sri Lankan startups. So these things are actually definitely happening. So you need to keep an eye for that. So that's actually the job for media. You need to figure out what are the key media tech media versus investment startup channels that you need to keep on reading, understanding. You need to have a WeChat account, follow many people, understand these things, and so that you can just be part of this experience. And then you'll find especially if it is Kunming related, you need to find who are the organizations, entities that's related to sending this information out. Follow those accounts on WeChat, add them, and keep on just listening. Keep on listening till you find an opportunity, and then just act on top of it.
Thank you so much, Biman. Thank you, Alina, and thank you, Artem. We can talk for hours, I think, especially I think for the audience. This is very insightful discussion. They can access it later. But so far, it's wonderful to know your experiences and actually to realize that people who are successful have also been through challenges, and what are those challenges? And that's where we can relate to each other and genuinely inspire people who are looking for inspiration. So thank you. With that, we close the first panel. Let's join hands for our three wonderful panelists. And now back to you, Vika. Thank you.
Thank you, Azun. Thank you.